Jerome. Let me explain who Jerome is. Saint Jerome. By the way, all these pictures of these people are just totally imaginary. You know that, right? You know, there's no way anybody from an oil painting milieu would have known what Saint Jerome looked like. He was a little older than Augustine and died a little bit earlier. Close. But in any case, Jerome is famous because he was fluent, or I imagine he was fluent in both Hebrew and Greek and Latin. And he is the one who translates the Hebrew Old Testament into Latin and the Greek New Testament into Latin, which gives the church the Vulgate, which is vulgar, vulgar meaning it's in the language of the people. It's not an insult, it's just that this is so people can actually read it who are educated that speak Latin.
So he's responsible.
Well, it's kind of intriguing because prior to him doing this, the Jewish rabbis had translated the Hebrew Old Testament into Greek, and that was the Septuagint. It's called that because Septua means 70. There were 70 translators that translated it into Greek, and that had to also have been translated into Latin. I don't know who did that. I guess we could look it up. But in any case, part of the letters between Jerome and Augustine are fights over Jerome's new translation of the Hebrew Old Testament into Latin, because some of the translations, some of the words he uses are different than in the Septuagint, and Augustine's parishioners are used to the words from the Septuagint, and they get upset when they find out, no, wait a minute, no, it's a different word. And they almost have a riot. It might have even, got violent. I don't know. They got upset with the change. That just seems almost silly. I mean, I was alive. I started out in church with the Latin Mass. Gloria in excelsis Deo, et in terra pax hominibus. I still remember that stuff, right? Sorry. I know, I don't have any talent. Sorry. Pardon?
That was good.
It was good?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Maybe I should have become a singer. However, they changed. They had the Vatican II conference, and they decided that instead of the Latin Mass, it should be the Mass of the language of the people. So they changed. And I remember lots of people being really pissed off, It was so much neater. Although I remember as a kid wondering, what's so important about eggshells? Eggshells Deo? Right? No, I mean, as a kid, I didn't know what we were saying. It's almost like in a madrasa where you're just learning the Arabic without knowing what any of it is, right? It seems goofy to us. Why would you do that? But so, yeah, it really got people upset. And so they had Jerome and Augustine writing to one another. And by the way, this takes people carrying it by hand from northern Africa by ship and by land to Bethlehem, where Jerome was living. Can you imagine? And so some of the letters got lost, apparently. By the way, people all along the way copied them. So Jerome would have been the last one on the route to find out what Augustine was saying to him, and Augustine would have been the last to find out what Jerome was replying. Everybody was reading everybody's mail, basically, and making copies of it. So there's copies all over the place of these letters. So when you look at how many letters there are, that's actually not a surprise. I mean, this is letter 40, right? X before L, that would have made it 40. L is 50, but X in front of L makes it 10 less, so it's 40. So AD 397. This isn't the one I was reading this morning, but you get the idea. There's chapters. They're talking about the epistles and so on. Augustine is going to basically write the sermons based on interpretations of the Bible, both Old Testament and New, and trying to figure out how do we interpret these stories in light of our knowledge of the world from a Platonic point of view. You see what I mean? See how complex this is? And there's lots of others. There's Pelagius, who argues with them and loses. That becomes a heresy. And there's others, and so on. So there's lots of arguments between these individuals, and gradually what happens is you end up with a church dogma following the interpretation that Augustine gives us. So the fall is interpreted as the point at which humans, starting with Adam and Eve, have become aware of good and evil. And the problem, of course, is that God, by definition, is all good. So how did evil get into the world? You probably asked this yourself. If you've heard that God is all good and God is all powerful. I remember the first question that intrigued me in philosophy. If God is all powerful, can he create a rock that's too heavy for him to lift? Right? Well, here's another one. God is all good, and he's all powerful. He's created everything. And since that's the case, how could there be evil in the world?
Assumption is faulty.
But it can't be.
That
You
God
can't
is
have one
good.
without the other. It's a balance.
Well, here goes Augustine. And by the way, Einstein loves this. Einstein's old one bug, right? And part of it has to do with Augustine's interpretation of time. I'll do something. I'll draw a circle on the board. For Augustine, I like using a circle. Einstein, you put the time-space cone thing, but put G for God, not just because I'm a Mason, but also because it can stand for God. You have Bog, Theos, whatever. In any case, G, God. And we're moving along in time. In fact, let me go to does anybody see Manichaeans, Confessions? Let me get that.
Did he write more than Aristotle?
I believe so. Yeah, you could spend your whole life reading his stuff. In fact, my understanding is they still haven't actually translated all of his works. I'm looking for time. How do I do that? It's,
Control F.
Control F. Time. And concerning the most unhappy time, let's go to the next one. Grief ceased by time. Some of this is absolutely hilarious. Behold, I answer to him who asks, what was God doing before he made heaven and earth? I answer not, as a certain person is reported to have done, facetiously, avoiding the pressure of the question. He was preparing hell, saith he, for those who pry into mysteries. One translation is, for he who asks such questions, preparing hell. That's hilarious. That's a joke. That's funny. At least I think so. But the answer is, before God created time, there was no then. There was no time before God created time. All time began when God created it. And so there was no, what was God doing before created time? Right? That's it. So all of time is in the circle, right? That's fun. Oh, did I lose my place? I did. Shoot. Pardon? No, that'll take me to the next page. Control F. Time. Yeah, before the times created by God, time was not. There is only a moment of present time. Oh, I like this. This is good stuff. And yet, we may say that time is long and time is short. You know, if you're asking, what is time, right? Nor do we speak of this save of time past and future. A long time past, for example, we call 100 years ago. In like manner, a long time to come, 100 years hence. But a short time past, we call, say, 10 days ago. And a short time to come, 10 days hence. But in what sense is that long or short? Which is not. For the past is not now, and the future is not yet. Therefore, let us not say it is long, but let us say of the past it hath been long, and of the future it will be long. Oh, my Lord, my light. And by the way, this is interesting. All of his writings, except for when he's talking to like Jerome or one of the other people that he writes to, he's talking to God. And this is curious to me because when you talk about like Charles Taylor, The Sources of the Self, or you talk about Harold Bloom, The Invention of the Human, at what point did humans become self-reflective and think of themselves as a self and literally begin thinking them to themselves as themselves? Like, you know, I think you all do this, I would hope, right? That you've grown up in a culture where you were trained, that program was installed in your head, where you were thinking about yourself and you're thinking about what you're doing, etc. Right? So that's already an installed program for us, at least in this culture, but it might not be for all humans for all time. And people argue that it hadn't been invented yet. In fact, they blame Descartes for it as one possibility. Harold Bloom argues, no, it was Shakespeare, and Shakespeare is before Descartes. Well, Descartes reads Shakespeare, so it could be. But he's always talking to God. So I mean, it looks an awful lot like he's thinking to himself in answer to, you know, those arguments. And this is, of course, way earlier. But theoretically, he is talking to God. I'm not sure. Time past hath been long, etc., etc. So let us see, therefore, O human soul, whether present time can be long. Have you ever tried to stop time in its tracks? How about we all together? When I say, you know, 3, I count to 3. Everybody stop time right then, so we can look at that moment, right? Ready? 1, 2. Okay, it's not going to work, and everybody's already laughing, which is good. Time keeps on slipping into the future. Sorry, it was a popular song. yeah, we can't stop it. Time for us keeps on moving. But we're finite creatures. We can't imagine all of time at once. We can't really stop time right this minute. Instead, time keeps on this kind of process for us. But from the perspective of God, God sees all time at once. Kind of like a photon. That was a conversation we were having just the other day. Somebody and I were talking about it. But yeah, a photon, if the photon hits us from a star billions of light years away, for that photon, it's still the moment that it left. It's, hasn't experienced any time, right? Because of the equation. So if you look at the equation, if you're at the speed of light, time stops for you, right? So that's cool. So from God's perspective, all of time exists at once. Which I mean, if we think of the time-space cone that Einstein talks about, that's all of time is there. Our position moves as we're progressing through time. By the way, how does time progress? I had a physicist here at a lecture up in the library explain that yes, it seems like we have like a DVD player in our head, and time is like a DVD disc with all of the movie on it. You put the disc into the DVD player, and it makes it look to us as if you're seeing movement. But we know that on the disc, everything is already there. It's permanent, right? As long as the disc lasts, right? So in a sense, that's what time is like. And we're just seeing the motion because we're like the DVD player. Our consciousness is like the DVD player. And it's playing our position through time and space, right? So for God,